Hi, and welcome to Self Love Week. I'm Kirsten Smith and I run Shine, and I help busy working women take time out from the day to day and learn really useful and practical tools to enable them to live their lives with more peace and less stress. So, if this is the first video you're watching, I encourage you to pop back and have a look at the ones from the days before. There's some gold in there. And also, if you're not signed up for the competition, this week you can win a fully funded place on my weekend retreat. So if you don't know how to do that or you haven't already done it, I'm going to pop you some details below. On to today's masterclass. So today we are talking overwhelm. It's pretty timely for me because let me tell you, I've had a really overwhelming day. And I've been using some of the tricks that I'm going to talk to you about today. When we feel overwhelmed, it's so debilitating, it's exhausting, and really it's something that I try to work hard on avoiding. But of course, things happen. Life is life, and it's hard to completely eradicate overwhelm. So yeah, I'm doing my best. It's a work in progress, but I thought that some of these tips might help you. So off we go then. 10 ways to beat overwhelm. So in our busy day to day, we often tell ourselves that we don't have time to take breaks. We can't possibly take time out. But when we hit overwhelm, ploughing on is often so counterproductive and we're just not effective at the task that we're trying to complete. So we can experience a release of hormones like adrenaline and cortisol when we're overwhelmed. So taking a break just allows the body to return to normal levels. And that to me makes a lot more sense than trying to keep going. So if you're making notes today, then pop yourself a note to make a plan each day, which includes breaks. Number 2 is doing a meditation. So even a few minutes coming back to the breath can be really beneficial for you, whether you meditate regularly or not. I've got a 5-minute overwhelm meditation on my Instagram highlights, but also stay tuned because later in the week, I'm going to be showing you a couple of breathing techniques, and I'm also going to do a meditation for you to use. Reframing. So overwhelm can often show up with feelings of guilt, shame, and negative self-talk. So I encourage my clients to consider, would you speak to others the way that you're speaking to yourself? My negative self-talk was one of the reasons that I felt so stuck 8 or 9 years ago when I first started kind of a bit of a journey of personal development. And the way I spoke to myself was shocking. It was awful. And don't get me wrong, there are days when I still beat myself up over things, but reframing it is a super useful way of, well, getting yourself into a different frame of mind. So when you're overwhelmed, I would say, like, give yourself grace. Life is really hard and you're doing your best and you're human and you can't just do everything. So I want you to think about the thoughts that you have. So on a piece of paper, I want you to write 2 columns. One column is your current thought or belief, and the second column is the reframe. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. By the way, if you're not wanting to take notes today, I can send you this as a PDF too. So all you've got to do is drop me a DM or an email and I'll do that. So an example of a thought that's negative to yourself would be, I am rubbish at remembering things. So maybe you've forgotten something and you just beat yourself up and say, I'm so crap at remembering things. I can never remember anything. And the reframe for that would be something like, I've got a lot on my plate and I've got lots to remember. I'm going to review my diary system. So you can see that rather than beating yourself up about something that is perfectly normal, we can't remember everything, you are telling yourself, actually, no, I've got a lot on my plate. I've got a lot to remember. Let me work on a way that I can forget things less. Another reframe might be, I'm not a very good friend, or I'm not a very good parent, or I'm not a very good partner. This one comes up for me a lot because we end up spreading ourselves too thinly. So a reframe for I'm not a good friend, or I'm not a good parent, or I'm not a good partner would be something like, I invest time into my relationships. I have boundaries around the time I need for work and self-care, and that is okay. So what we're trying to do here is realize that you can't give everything of yourself to other people. It's just not possible. So by reframing that into allowing yourself, giving yourself grace, giving yourself that permission to just really invest time in your relationships, yes, but invest time in yourself as well. So the homework on that would be to keep going through those columns and think about some of those thoughts or beliefs. Think about them when they come up. Whenever they come up for you and you find yourself talking to yourself in a negative way, just remember that there is a reframe. And my cat has decided to join us. So tip number 4, change your location. Change your location, change your mind. Overwhelm is linked to the brain's fight or flight response. So a simple change of location, or taking a few minutes to run, walk, stretch, jump, dance, it can satisfy that need, and it can enable you to feel refreshed again. So learning point on this one, or homework, would be, what are the places that I can go to change my location and therefore change my mind? Number 5, using post-it notes. I love this one and I use it all the time. So I find this particularly useful when I've got a lot of tasks that absolutely have to be done. So like chores, for example, you know, when that feeling when I'm sitting right opposite my kitchen now and thinking, I need to get my post-its out after this. So thinking about chores, you walk into the kitchen, like the washing's overflowing, there's dirty stuff all over the sides, there's school admin or life admin sitting all over the side. It can be really hard to know where to start. So what I want you to do is take a pile of post-its, or the next time you feel like that, you don't have to do it now. Take a pile of post-its and write just one task on each note. And then you keep going through the pile of post-its until you've written your whole to-do list on that pile of post-its. So then what you do is you work through each task with only that post-it note showing. And what that does is it means that you're only focusing on that single task. You're not focusing on all of them at once. In fact, to an overwhelmed brain, what I often find is I completely forget about all of the things that are underneath. So that's why I find that one so useful. So homework, learning point, or note take on this one. Here's my list of things that have to be done. This is ready to go into my pile of post-its. Next up, number 6, say no. So I'm as guilty as anyone of taking on tasks to keep other people happy, or to keep the peace. You know what it's like. Quite often involves your mother-in-law. But it does, doesn't it, right? So sometimes you don't have time to do things, or you don't want to. Sometimes it's for a relative, sometimes it's for a friend, whatever it might be. So the problem with this is that it doesn't serve you. You're not helping yourself in any way, and you're adding things to your to-do list that you don't really want to do anyway, right? So what I want you to get used to doing is practicing saying no and not explaining yourself. You don't have to justify your own health and your own happiness, right? You don't. As much as you think you do, you actually don't. And yes, of course, there are there are nuances to this. It's not like we're just going to completely say no to everything our mother-in-law asks us to do. By the way, I do love my mother-in-law. She's amazing. But, from experience, we know that, it's a common one. It's probably one that resonates with you. So what you've got to realise here is that your health and happiness is more important than anyone else's. And it might be really, really hard for you to believe that. It might be really, really hard for you to hear that. But it's true. If you don't prioritise your own health and happiness, then you can't prioritise anyone else's. So saying no, what are the things that you could say no to? So during periods of overwhelm, this is even more important than ever. If you're really overwhelmed, you really don't have time to be saying yes to other people's stuff, right? So homework, learning points, or just something for you to write down. Things I am saying no to, and then leave yourself a big space. What am I going to say no to in the next day, in the next week, in the next month, in the next year? What am I going to say no to? Next up, number 7, ask for help. Now, I think some of us think that we're better at this than we are. I probably think I'm better at it than I am, but it's something that I've worked on really, really hard. So not all of us have a ready supply of help available, right? For me, I live on my own. Well, I live on my own with my son. I don't have family nearby. My partner isn't local. I just don't have that many people that I can call on. But I've worked really hard over the years to build up a network of people, either people I can pay to help me, and I know that we don't all have that luxury, but my God, I would rather, I would not ever get rid of my cleaner. I don't pay her a hell of a lot a month. She comes once every 2 weeks and does a couple of hours, and it just helps me to keep on top of things. I'm not saying that that is the answer to everybody's problems. Of course, I know that that's not possible for many people, but there are other things. So, you know, neighbours. I've got a neighbour who's forever wanting to help me. He's amazing, does loads of stuff. I don't even know what day my bins go out because he does them. Friends, school mums, people are willing to help. So just keep listening. When is somebody saying, is there anything I can do to help? Take them up on it. You know, people love to help. So who can you ask for help? And knowing that that's not a weakness as well, right? So anytime you hear somebody say, I'd love to help, or let me know if I can help, take them up on it. See what you can dish out to them. Because you'll soon find whether they're genuine or not, right? So in a work capacity, so a phrase that I live by is only do what only you can do. So in other words, if someone else can, why would you? So homework, learning point, note take for that one is 2 columns. People who can help me, things they can help me with. So again, this isn't all something that you have to do overnight. I don't want to add to your overwhelm. This is just something for you to work through when you're thinking, my God, I need help. Who can you ask for help and what can they help you with? Next up, number 8, what can you ditch? So it's a similar vein to saying no, but we're talking here more about tasks, more about, it might be to do with work, it might be to do with housework. Seriously, you should see my house during the week. It looks like I've been burgled right now. Trying to remain focused on the screen and not look around my house. So what can you ditch? What can you let go of? Do you need to keep on top of things during the week? I mean, I'm not saying that everybody does, right? But is there anything that you can give yourself permission to cancel? Give yourself permission not to do? It might be a meeting. It might be an appointment. It might be meeting up with family and friends. It might be a task around the house. It might be a task that you can push. It might be an appointment that you can push. So again, with those boundaries, if you've said yes to something you really didn't want to do, this is your cue to ditch it. This is your full permission to go, you know what? Actually, I'm no longer available for that. I'm no longer able to do that. I'm no longer able to help you with that. I'm really sorry. And we often think that we're letting people down when we do this, but personally, I'd really rather let someone else down than myself, because the more you give of yourself to others, the less you're giving to yourself. So, homework, learning point, note take on this. What are the things I'm ditching? Give yourself a list and give yourself a big space to put things in there. Number 9, what can you dump? So, okay, here we're talking about that kind of inner monologue that we have. So many of us have this kind of constant revolving to-do list. I was talking to my boyfriend about this weekend, and really, like, I constantly, especially at the moment, have this constant like ticker tape of things running through my head. Don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that, make sure that you do this, make sure you write that down, make sure you put that in the thing, make sure you don't forget PE kit, shoes, blah blah blah, whatever it is. It's just constantly running through my mind. So this is one I use a lot when I'm feeling overwhelmed in that way. So getting the biggest piece of paper, notepad, whiteboard, whatever it is that you can find, and get every single thought, every single task, every single worry out of that brain. So you're literally here, you're dumping absolutely everything onto this piece of paper, right? If you're feeling up to it at that point, you might even take that to the next level. It might just be that you need to get it out of your head. That's great. But if you want to take it to the next stage, you can do something called the 4Ds, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But even if all you do is that brain dump, I promise it will help to get it all written down. Now, this isn't anything new, right? But how often do we do it? How often do we actually stop and go, I'm fed up of this ticker tape that's running around in my head. This has got to change. So just brain dump. So if you're still feeling overwhelmed after doing that, maybe hit up one of the other tips, a meditation, a change of scene, and then come back and kind of tackle this huge to-do list. So homework, learning points, little note to take. Here's my brain dump. Here's a page for me to write down everything that's going through my head. As I say, there is a next level to this. So you might have heard of the 4Ds of time management. So what we're thinking about here is 4 boxes. So you've got do, you've got diarise, you've got delegate, and you've got ditch. So the way that we prioritize these is do is the most urgent and the most important stuff that you've got to do, okay? If something is less urgent but more important, then you need to put it in your diary. If something is less important and less urgent, you're going to delegate it. Sorry, if something is important but not urgent, you're going to try and delegate it. So we're looking back at help here. We're looking at how can we get rid of this task? Do we need to do this task at all? And if it's not important and it's not urgent, why the hell are you doing it at all? Ditch it. Make sense? If you want that as a format, I can send that to you. Just drop me a DM or I will put a link below for where you can download this. And my last tip of 10, act like you're ill. Before you get ill, act like you're ill. So if you thought that you were going down with a cold or a flu, you would cut back, right? You'd cut back on what you're doing, you'd change plans, you'd hit the sofa, right? But we don't ever really do this for our mental health. I mean, maybe we do, but not everybody does it, and not everybody does it consistently. We're much less likely to do it for our mental health. But my go-to when overwhelm really hits is to do as many of these other 9 things as I possibly can, and then take 24 to 48 hours out. And I know, I can almost hear you screaming at me. I know it's not that simple. I know it's not. But when I say take 24 to 48 hours off, what I mean is I'm still doing all the stuff I have to do, right? I'm still getting my child to and from school. We're still eating. I'm still showering. But I ignore all the jobs that I feel I should do, and I act as if I would as if I had the flu, right? So I might even be calling in sick. So I'm going to vitamins, I'm going to water, I'm on the sofa, I've got my comfiest clothes, TV, book, lots of sleep, lots of food, long baths, phone off. So like I say, I know when you have loads of life commitments, this isn't always possible, but if you can spend any time in this way, I'm not saying you have to spend that 24 or 48 hours, but any hours that you can spend in that way, it really helps, really, really helps. Obviously, if you're self-employed, that can be easier. But also, does your company do anything like duvet days? Do you have any sick days that you would get paid for? Like, why is it that we as a society think, okay, it's completely fine if you've got COVID or the flu or whatever, but if you've got a mental health, your mental health is beginning to suffer because you're getting really overwhelmed? We don't tend to do it as much. So I want you to think about that. Like, is that a possibility for you the next time you're feeling really, really overwhelmed? So, as with every habit or technique that I teach or coach on, I do believe that some is better than none. So even if that looks to you like an hour on the sofa of an evening, just not doing anything, great. But the more time you can do it, the better. So, homework, learning point, thing to write down. What are the things that give you comfort when you're ill? I've got a really weird thing. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've got a really weird thing about towels. I don't know why. If I feel poorly, whether it's mentally or physically, I really want to snuggle up to a clean towel. Don't ask me why. It must have been something from my childhood or whatever it is. But yeah, so are there things like that that give you comfort when you're ill? How many of them can you fit in to your life when you're feeling overwhelmed? What can you do to really like wrap yourself up, literally and metaphorically? What can you do to make yourself feel better? So I hope you enjoyed those tips today. One thing I would say is if you're constantly operating in a state of overwhelm, then I would be thinking about what you can change on a more fundamental level. And this isn't something that I say to preach, but like tiny little changes over time. And I'm going to do a masterclass later this week on making tiny changes. If you're constantly feeling overwhelmed, it might be that there are tiny little things that you can start to do that are going to have an overall impact on the constant state of overwhelm that you might be in. So I really hope that that's helped. Contact me if you have any questions or comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.